it's Lauren here. A warning, this episode contains deep chats, lots of swear words, and some things you might find upsetting, but you know that we cannot help but overshare.
Hi, it's Gemma.
And Lauren.
And you're listening to Oops, We Overshared Again.
A podcast all about oversharing because we just cannot help ourselves.
Let's try that again.
Well, to be fair, I don't think I said the word excited either. I think I said excited.
Okay, right, ready? Take 26. Hello and welcome back.
Hello, we are being joined today by a very special guest, somebody we're really, really excited to chat with. Her name is Georgia Goodhew, and it is, honestly, it's such a great chat, this one. Like, I hope you absolutely love this podcast episode because we honestly could have spoken for about 3 hours.
Well, without further ado, let's get stuck in.
Let's do it. Hello, Georgia.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's amazing.
Oh, it's a pleasure on all fronts.
We're very excited. We've got like a lot to ask you today. Not like an interrogation, like it's not.
It might be a little bit of an interrogation, to be fair.
But honestly, we're just really interested. Like there's stuff that like I'm like just dead interested in. I know Gem's like really interested as well, and whatever.
Maybe you could even argue super fan.
There you go.
Stop it.
Blush. Before we get started though, do you want to just introduce yourself for anyone that doesn't actually know who you are?
Yes, I'm always like so interested as to what people want me to say, and I feel like something different comes out every time.
Whatever comes to you.
Okay, sure. I am Georgia Goodhew. I am a life coach. I'm so many different things, and this is why I don't know what to say when it comes to these little elevator pitches. Mm-hmm. I'm genuinely someone who is so very deeply passionate about women and women showing up and women being able to just be seen in like the divine reverence of who they are. So that is a very encapsulating statement of who I am and what I do.
I love that. That's great. And I think why not change who you are every day? Like say whatever comes to you in that moment.
Exactly. Depending on where I am in my cycle. Like I'm day 3 of my cycle and I'm feeling very dreamy and like connected. So it's always interesting to see what's going to come out.
Amazing. We will come to the cycle. We will be talking about that. I've got some questions there. Before though, can I just say, because I mean, I know you've moved away from this a bit, but I just want to touch on it really quickly because it's, I guess, probably when both me and Gemma found you. You obviously used to call yourself the pussy coach.
I did.
I want to talk about this quickly because it's quite a bold thing to call yourself. I think like we can all agree with that. Like, where did that come from, and like how was that received? Because I can imagine like I feel like I could do it really confidently online, but I'd be a bit awkward around people that I like know personally. Did you have any of that, or were you just like so confident in it?
Oh, I've went through stages, I guess. I don't even know where I came up with the term. I think someone once mentioned about having like a pussy coach, and I was like, that sounds fucking cool. And like at the time, I think it really gave me an identity that I could sort of like nestle myself in a way. I think there's so much of going through this process of like personal transformation where we go through different phases of needing like something to land upon. And so when describing it to different people, like my dad, for example, I was never like, I'm not going to say what I did to people. But it was always received in different ways. For the most part, people would be like, sorry, what? You do what? Yeah. Well, what is that? And I think that's probably why I got to the point where it's only like quite recently where I've lovingly let that go, where I felt like I just didn't need it anymore. It wasn't something that aligned with what I felt like I had to show up and how I wanted to express myself. But I loved having her alongside me for all this time. She gave me a lot of like oomph when I felt like I really needed it.
Yeah, I love that idea of, sorry Gem, sorry.
Go on.
I love that idea of feeling like it's not that you don't like it anymore or anything, it's that you don't need it. I like that. That's nice.
Yeah, I just got to say as well, and like I think anyone who does follow you on Instagram, I'm always in awe of how confident you are, and how like I would love to have the confidence to wear sexy underwear as well, girl. Jesus, the stuff you wear, I'm like, get me some of that.
I don't own that.
No,
I actually, moving into this house right next to me, I have a whole drawer dedicated to the sexy underwear that I laid out.
I mean, I'm here for it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm more of a granny pant kind of chick, but I wish I had the confidence to wear sexy underwear and take photos of myself. And that is one of the things I always look at your photos and think, she's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
Not that I'm not gorgeous, I'm not saying that, but big-headed. But I'm in awe of your confidence, and you give me confidence.
Yes, that's the thing, isn't it? I think like representation is so important in any space. Like I know growing up, like I never saw women with bodies like mine who were represented like in the media. And then I think I just got to a point where I was like, fuck it. Like if there's no one that looks like me, I might as well just show up and enjoy the way I look.
How did you become, have you always been that confident, or has that been something that's come to you over time? Or
no, definitely not. I know we're going to get to the cycle stuff, like you mentioned that, but for me, like really reconnecting with my cycle after being on the pill for like 15 years, it was just when I like reclaimed the body shame around like the deepest shameful parts of myself. It's like that was such like an underlying thing that like everything else sort of toppled down around. And I was like, oh cool, if I can love the part of me that I like deeply felt the most shame about, then my thighs get to come along, and my like wild curly hair, even though it's up in a bun right now, gets to come along. Like all the parts of me that I thought were too much, I was like, they all get to come now. It's great. And it's like I spent so much time in my life worrying about these parts of me. I'm like, if I put all that time and energy into something good instead, like something good can come off the back of that. It was just a bit of a realization. I was like, what a waste of time that is. Let's just stop doing that.
Absolutely. Do you have days where you still are like, I just want to ignore all of those parts of me that I used to be uncomfortable with? Or do you like, are you pretty even at feeling that confidence all the time?
It tends to be new things that pop up. Like lately, I've been having a slight obsession with like my eye crinkles. Okay. And I think it's new things, right? And it's always an understanding of like, well, why do I feel this way? And it's like there's so many women, because like I'm 33, women of my age who get Botox and who get fillers and things. There's like nothing wrong with that. But again, it's the representation of it, right? If I don't see anyone who looks like me, then of course I look at myself and think like there's something wrong with me. And it's just, I think, a process of daily looking at yourself and really looking at yourself and being like, I get to be okay with that, you know?
I'm the same age as you, and I feel it a lot. Like, a lot of my friends get Botox, which good for them.
Yeah.
Personally, hate needles, would not be a bit of me, but I feel it a lot, and I also feel that I swear sometimes I'm still 20.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm how old? No, don't be so silly. And the thing is, when we're like 19, 33 seems old,
doesn't it?
Now we're here, and it's like, no, I'm young, so young. Like, definitely not. But it is, and our bodies change, right? And everything. And we do have wrinkles, and we do have things, and we don't bounce back as quick from stuff, and we get more tired than we maybe did 10 years ago. So it is, and I definitely with you on the eye crinkles thing.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, oh.
I know. But at some point I'll just be like over it, and then it'll probably be a new thing that I get to lovingly embrace and encounter.
I don't dye my hair, right? And I'm going grey a lot. But it's funny how many people point that out to me.
Really?
Oh, not necessarily in a nasty way, but like family the worst. And it's like, even my uncle was like, Jesus, you're going grey. He's like, I'm not old enough to have a niece that's going grey.
I've been going grey since I was like 20, so let's just, you know, put that back in the box.
I actually call them my sparkly highlights.
I love that.
You know,
it's just people don't know how to deal with seeing it. I think it's
Absolutely.
so like, it's weird that it's so uncommon, you know, but it gets commented on.
I'm gonna keep my long hair. I'm gonna end up like the woman at the end of Titanic.
Yes,
just running around with this long white hair.
Get it?
Swinging around the heart of the ocean.
My hair's too curly to have a bob. It's just going to be like massive, so I just can't be doing that.
When my hair's short, it goes really curly. It's more of a curly wave at this length. But yeah, I'm with you.
I'll be honest. I'm the woman that tries not to care but cares way too much, and has that, like, I'm nearly 31. I'm 31 next month. I'll be 31 when this comes out, and I'm just starting to. I was always that person that was like, I don't care, like all of this stuff, like you age, like it's all good. And then as it started to happen, it's like for the first time I'm like, oh, maybe I would get a little something. And it's like you see that creeping in, but again, I think it's because like you just don't expect to see it, like, because nobody else has got it. And it's like, it's mad because there's like a good 15 people in my phone book that I could text and be like, who does your Botox? And because it's so common now, it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important the discussion of it. Like in anything, like for me, I always like sort of had these thoughts, but it's just that I didn't have the space to share them, and that's what fucked me up the most in all areas of any sort of trauma or, you know, thought process we go through. It's not having the space that tends to be the thing that like traps us in the feeling of it.
Yeah.
Once you can acknowledge it, you're like, oh, actually, I'm okay now.
Yeah, no, that's true. You talk a lot. I was stalking you earlier, to be honest. Let's not play it down. And you talk a lot about like feeling safe in your body, and yeah, that's, I guess, the expression that I think I probably just like read earlier or picked up on. What does that mean? Like, from somebody that's like maybe new to kind of, I guess, just understanding myself and my body and being a woman and all of this kind of stuff more. What does that even mean? I don't even know how to phrase that.
Sure. So it's the safety in our bodies. For me, safety feels like having a lot of space. And I always find this a hard concept to sort of describe. But it feels like having space between me and the world. So when things come, and it might be when I see my reflection, like when I see my eye wrinkles or whatever it is, or when someone says something that might have, you know, activated or triggered me in the past, when I have space, I can feel like it's not up here, and it's almost instantly that I can sense when the world is too close to me, and then I feel like I have to be like on the defense or putting my walls up really quickly or hiding. And definitely like through different times in my cycle or different periods in my life where I'm being affected by stuff, how much like energetic space I have is how safe I feel in my body.
Yeah, that makes
any sense.
No, I think it does. I get that. It's almost like a claustrophobic feeling when you feel like everybody's ideas or thoughts or anything is kind of like too close to you and weighing on you. I get that, I think.
Yeah, so when it feels safe, it's just a sense, and it's a very like mothering sense for me of having like this very gentle, tender like love, I guess, enveloping me. So when I feel safe, I don't feel like I need to put my walls up. I don't feel like I need to react. I don't feel like there is anything that's close enough that I need to run away, because for me, for like 20 years of my life, it was running. It was like, let's get the fuck out of here in every sense of the word, like physically, emotionally, the whole shebang. And so now it's so important for me to like cultivate that space around me in lots of different ways so that I can encounter the world the way I want to.
That makes so much sense, and I can relate to you in so many ways in terms of that kind of like running thing. And that's, I have bad anxiety, and a lot of that is to do with that need to like constantly be able to run from any situation. And it's a really interesting concept of the idea and of being able to put like the space and that kind of almost that like freedom and that freeing energy around yourself, so that no matter like what situation you're put in, you are safe within yourself.
Definitely. And it's not even, it's even like within the parts of me, right? Like that inner child or the inner part of us that wants to run, if we have that, like even having space from her, you know, she doesn't get to be right sneakily next to my ear, because when she is, I can't really tell that she's there, and then I act in this very like frantic like place where it doesn't feel good. So even being able to discern, and it's almost instantly, I always bring my hands up like very naturally of being like, oh, like there you are. And the more space we have in our lives, the more we can notice like when these parts come close to us. We can sometimes feel them like inching, and when we have less space, they're like right up against us, and then we're like reacted from that place. So it's having this sense of like the core part of Georgia, like the core part of me, and being able to lead from that, and it feels very relaxed and calm, which is nice.
I love I've done a lot of work on that exact thing that you're talking about there, and within, obviously it's no secret, I experience anxiety, help people with their anxiety, but in like counselling and stuff as well, I've done stuff with that, and always it's exactly like you describe. My higher self, my inner Gemma, I suppose, my higher self I was imagining as being Cher. Yeah, I do. well but when Cher's driving the car, it's calm, everything's fine. But as soon as some of these other little parts start coming and they start taking over, and exactly what you say, if they get a bit close, they can slip in there and you wouldn't know.
Yeah, so easy.
Yeah. I love that. I think of the inside of my head. Have you seen that film Inside Out, the Disney film?
Yes. Yeah.
I legit feel that my head is like that.
Yeah.
Sher is
100%.
in main control.
Yeah, you have to be, but they're so fucking sneaky.
Shares. Yeah. A happy Cher, a sad Cher, an angry Cher, a disgusted Cher.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I'm like, everyone really is like, I mean, on the other sense, it's like that movie, what is it, when it's like Patricia and she has like multiple different personalities.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I can't think
what's it called. And Patricia's like the one of them.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I think it's called. And it's like we all have the ability to like be overtaken by those parts. Like each of us have all of these different parts. And it's just like, it's very interesting when you become aware of them all.
Where's the line between keeping them at a distance and almost being like ignorant to the fact that they're even there? Like, how can you get the right amount of distance without just, you know, like pushing it down? And how where's the balance there? Or is it different for everyone and in every situation?
Yeah, I think it's the practice of like sovereignty and the discernment of that, to know when we are leading with compassion, I think, for those parts of us, or bypassing them and completely ignoring them, which I find like within our cycle, that's when, if we have been bypassing, like you're gonna hear about it when autumn comes.
Well,
when you descend.
Yeah, well, this is interesting because, and you talk about autumn specifically, Gemma knows this, I had an absolute fucking meltdown this month, like an absolute, great, love that. I absolutely lost my shit this month, and I would say on a general cycle, I get a little bit more emotional, but I'm generally quite level. And this month I'm like crying in voice notes, being like, I don't know what to fucking do with my life, this is happening, I've got this stress and this isn't happening for me right now, and it was like, I was also late by like 2 or 3 days, and I don't know if there was like an extra build up, but I just absolutely lost my shit. Like, why is it? I mean, I know you have hormones, but like, why does it all just like come to a head then? Because, or is there anything we can do about it?
The thing is, when it comes in that moment, I think like the work, like the work from the great menstrual mother, I like to think of it, is to surrender to it, right? To drop our bundle and just to be in it. But the threads of why we get there is always like from, it might be like the previous cycle or how you entered that bleed, or we can always look at like the opposing season. So for autumn, it's going to be spring, to see sort of what threads came through there, but it's often tied to perhaps how we started bleeding for the previous cycle and how we were like conserving and honoring our energy moving into that.
Okay, that's interesting. I'll have to like think back and be just conscious of it going forward, maybe.
It's very contextual.
What got you interested in cycles in the first place?
Oh, so I was on the pill for like 15 years. So I went on the pill when I was like 13 until I was like 28.
Can I ask, just sorry on that?
No.
When you were put on the pill, was it to regulate your periods, perchance?
No, but that's a very common one, which is, I can't, like, I just get very enraged when I start thinking about the whole
Same.
Because it's like, it's women's health is just not prioritized. And even now I go to the doctor and I feel so like unacknowledged and like not listened to, despite all the work I've done, despite all the knowledge I have. I will come out feeling like so like sad about the whole experience, because I know that I know so much more, especially about my own body, than anyone else, but we're so belittled and we're so like not listened to and not acknowledged in anything. And teenage girls especially are like even listened to less, right? Like I went on for going on like Roaccutane for my skin. They're like, if you get pregnant, your like baby will be deformed or whatever. And I was like, why did no one ask me, like, are you having sex? You know, I didn't have sex till I was like 21. Like that could have been a very simple question. And then I wouldn't, you know, like, be is a teenage girl. And so, and even then, like if you go on Roaccutane anyway, the pill puts your skin at like a prepubescent level. So when you come off the pill, your skin's always going to get fucked up again, which is why I stayed on it for so long. I was like, I've got a wedding coming up, and if I come off the pill now, then my skin's going to get fucked up and I have bad skin for the wedding pictures, and that's not going to happen. So I'll just stay on it. And that was just like this continual process I was in for so many years.
Yeah.
And then you come off the pill and then was like,
well,
become the guru basically for cycles.
Well, I came off it and I was like, what the fuck is this whole experience I'm having now? Like I've got like discharge, like I've never had discharge on the pill before. And like I have all these emotions. I have like a sex drive. But this is like, I was still so deeply caught up in like the shame of my body. And when I asked people, they're like, oh, that's just like that's having a cycle. And it was very like minimized again. I still felt like a sort of outsider on it all. And I was like, I just feel like there's more to the story here. There's something else that must be happening. And I remember meeting, it's so funny when you think about like the people that meet that like change the trajectory of your life. It was this woman who sold like essential oils at like a local market. And she was talking about like the different days of your cycle. And I was like, oh, I've never heard about anything other than like just your period, right? She was like, read this book, Wild Power. And I was like, okay. And that was that. Like, I was like, this, I knew there was something here. Like, it was just like this innate, ancient knowing that there was more to the story. And I found it. And I was like, fuck yeah, this is great. That was it.
I love that.
We don't talk about it enough. I think, I mean, I had some things happen last year to do with women's health and stuff. And I was like, I don't even know what body parts are even in there sometimes. Like, I have no idea, like, what the difference is between the womb and the uterus and the like, and you realize how much you don't know when you're put in these situations where people are talking about all these things and you're kind of like expected to know, but then you're also not. And I had like a conversation with my partner and he said something about like, when is your cycle? I was like, what do you think a cycle is? Like all the time. Like, and it's that there's just so much, like you say, just not spoken about. And I think, like you say, it's very much downplayed as well. My mum at the moment is going through the menopause, and it's medically induced as well, so it's coming early, so it's kind of hitting her really like drastically, but it's mad how many things you're like, oh, just the menopause, just leave it. And it's like, it's crazy like what the body is going through, and we just are expected to just not even ask questions or talk about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just, it blows my mind. I think I can't go too deeply down that route within myself because I get way too like chaotic around the anger of it all, and I've spent too much of my life stuck being an angry feminist, and it didn't get me anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm serving the light now. I'm not meant to be working in the dark. Some people love that, but I just get burnt out very quickly. But yeah, it's just, I think for me, it's like a rightful grief rather than an anger of what I wasn't told and what I missed out on from not having this information. Like, I really grieved like those lost years of not cycling. And I think that's a very warranted grief. Yeah. I think that's what women go through when they reach menopause, right? The menopause is like the great awakener. Like, the reason we have, like, spiritually, the reason we have cycles is to work us and prepare ourselves for menopause. Like, only humans and like orcas go through menopause, and they think it's that because we have so much information as women when we reach that time of our lives that we don't need to cycle anymore. We don't need to keep having babies. It's not useful for us to keep having babies. It's useful for us to pass down all the information that we've learned and all the ways we've been worked through our cycle down to the younger generations.
That's a really beautiful way of looking at it.
It is.
Yeah.
Really it's like it's
a bit emotional, Georgia.
It is when we reach menopause, and this is why menopause is so fucked up for so many women, because they weren't worked by their cycles. They had no connection to it. And so they reach that time, and it's such like an embodied process going through menopause. Like, you're like fiercely like dropped into your body, and if you haven't had like years of experiencing that like consciously, of course you're like, what the fuck is going on here?
Well, I think for that generation specifically, like the generation kind of just above us, it was kind of probably maybe the only generation that has been incredibly heavily regulated with periods, but also hasn't been aware of necessarily as many of the effects of it, whereas we're starting to kind of move out of that a little bit. And so actually I wonder how many people reach that stage where they do go through their menopause or whatever it is, and they haven't ever really had that normal cycle, like you say. Because I know for me, so I came off contraception early last year, so I was 30, nearly 30, and I remember I went for like a pap smear, and they said to me like, oh, is this normal for your body? And I'm like, I have no idea. It's like, this is the first year I've not, had like any kind of extra hormones going on, like put inside me, so I don't know what's normal for me. And it's like, you almost, and it tends to be around our sort of age that we tend to kind of go through it, because we come off this contraception and stuff for whatever reason, and we are getting to know ourselves for the first time. And it's really interesting trying to get to know yourself at around 30. It's a really interesting and weird thing.
Yeah, 100%. It's just like, it's like you've opened a door that you can't then close.
Absolutely. And sorry, I was going to say, it's weird though, because it's weird, and it's like, yeah, like you say, you can't close it or whatever, but you also don't want to. Like, no. I have no desire to, like, I had the implant, but I have no desire to like have that again. Like, I'm quite happy now how I am. So it's like it's something that needed to be opened, but it's still very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Do you know though, right? So I'm similar to you, Georgia, but I was put on the pill. I was 15. I started my periods when I was 14 and a half. and because my periods hadn't regulated in 6 months, I was put on the pill. I wasn't sexually active as well till I was in my late teens, early 20s. And to be fair, it was almost a bit of a thing. All my friends were on it. So it was like, well, you know,
it's so normalized.
If you're not on the pill, like, oh, why are you not on the pill? Like, oh, it was a bit like that. So, and I was on the pill consistently until I was in my mid 26, I want to say. I was doing the marathon, and these headaches. I always had headaches anyway back then, but I had a migraine that lasted like 8 days, and went to the doctors, and they were like, oh, come off the pill. And until that point, the only thing I'd been told about it is that it could lower your risk of having, is it breast cancer? It was something. That was the only thing I was told. And that if you're over 35 and you smoke, you might be at a high risk of a blood clot. But I was young. I did smoke, but it didn't matter. So to me, I'm taking something that not only, you know, it regulates my periods, but also it's got all these health benefits. It wasn't until I come off it, and then I was off it for a few years because I was married but I didn't have sex. And then my partner, who I'm with now, we got together, and I had a very healthy appetite for sex. We had a lot of sex, and I was like, do you know, like, we're going through condoms like nobody's business. Sorry, mum, if you're listening. So I'll go on the pill, and I shit you not, I went back on it, and even Ben was like, within a week, I didn't want sex. I was all over the place with my mood. I felt really shit. And he was like, are you all right? And I was like, do you know, I think it's the pill. It's the only thing that's changed. Come off it, and I was fine again. And that was before I went all down this self-development journey that led me to getting into what I do, and before I really understood the full extent of how deep it all goes. And I still don't understand exactly how deep it all goes, but just that, how noticeable it was. And I think, and even then I said to myself, how many girls were the same as me, put on contraception at a really young, because your periods don't normalize for years.
No.
And then, but you know, 6 months, it's just quick, isn't it? Quick and easy. Then you know what day you're going to come on. That's it. Yeah. Next. And, or you don't have a break, and then you don't have a period, which was another thing that was obviously irregular then.
I love doing that. I was like, going to the beach, just won't get my period.
I'm going on holiday. I'll just go back to back. I won't bother with a break.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now you just sort of think like, definitely not. And I was in a good place with my body. I felt I knew myself inside and out before having my son, and then had a child, and then everything now. And even to this, I mean, he's 2.5 now, and I still don't have a clue. Still don't know what's going on. But it's interesting though that obviously you felt that, and that you then started looking into it and everything else, because there must be so many people that even listening to this that will probably have been on the pill and probably still are, or as a lot of people I know come off it to have a baby. Because you know, right, you have a baby 2 days after, might not even the day after my son was born, they were trying to push contraception on me. Do you want to go on the pill or do you want the injection? Neither, thanks.
Yeah.
And do you know what she went to me? You're super fertile after having a child. I was like, I've just pushed a child out of my vagina. Ain't nothing going up there for a while. I think we're good.
But even so, it like strips women of all sovereignty, all autonomy. We're treated like we're like infantilized all the time, right? Oh, yeah. We can't trust her to track her cycle. We can't trust her to know her body enough.
Do you know, I said that I tracked my cycle when they asked me what contraception I was using before having my son. Do you know what she said to me? Well, it's not reliable.
Oh, I said,
how is it not reliable? It's a cycle. Well,
especially it's more reliable than the pill is. Tracking it properly, right? Like tracking your temperature, tracking like your cervical mucus. But that's more reliable, like has a high efficacy than taking the pill every day.
But we're almost scared into it, right? Because when we're younger, it's like, well, if you have a penis go near you, definitely going to get pregnant. Then when you actually try and have a baby, you work out actually the moon has to be just right at 11 p.m. for 10 minutes, that window will be open.
Yeah.
If you don't hit it just right, not happening.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, so we get told that we can get pregnant at any time, so get on that pill, and then you come off and then you're expected to get pregnant straight away. And
but they don't give you any help unless you've been trying for 2 years or a year or 2 years. 2 years. So you can get pregnant at any time, but actually, try for 2 years before we'll help you.
Actually, we lied for a very long time. You know, just go on the pill, turn off your cycle. You don't need any of those hormones until you want to have a baby. Like, especially because
turn them back on.
All of your hormones, like estrogen, like grows new brain cells and new heart cells and new skin cells, and progesterone maintains them all. And they're just like, you don't need them. It's fine. There's no reason why you would need any of those hormones, even though they're a completely natural and very well needed part of every part of your body, like your immune system, your nervous system, your metabolism, your brain health. Like,
yeah, I think the problem for a lot of people is that we just don't even know. Like it's ignorance, and not by anyone's, but it's just not knowing, because like you say, you go to the doctor, or I was one of the few examples of people that was put on the pill for like sexual reasons. It was my mum was like, come on, we're off. And it was like when I just met my first boyfriend, and she was like, it's gonna happen soon, so let's, you know, be prepared. And so I was put on for that reason, although truth be told, I barely ever took it. I can't swallow the pill. I know it's tiny, but I still can't swallow it. I'm a wimp. Which is why I eventually had the implant. But it was, you go to somebody that is in a real position of power, right? Be it a doctor or anything, and you follow to an extent blindly your teachers, your doctors, your everything else, and we just, like you say, I still don't know the extent of what my period or my cycle kind of interferes with or is part of. Do you know what I mean? I don't know everything, because
yeah, no, we don't. We just, and we wonder why we're so fucking disembodied, why we have like no awareness, like why we're so stuck in our heads the whole time. We're never given any way to like land into our bodies and to listen to our bodies and to trust our bodies. We're taught that our bodies are dangerous and that our bodies are not to be trusted. And to,
do you not find though as well, this is something, so I use sanitary towels, as as Lauren will vouch for, recently bought some period pants.
Yes, lovely.
Did get bought some period bikini bottoms when on holiday, left them at home. That's a different story. However, I use pads. I haven't used a tampon since I was a teenager, because you had to, right? Because it was like gross. But even now, not everyone, but if I say to certain people that I'm friends with or a part of my family about a pad, I couldn't use a pad, it's gross. I'm like, it's your period, man. It's not gross. It's coming out here. Do you want it to stay in?
Yeah.
But I think it's that thing as well, isn't it? We are conditioned, like what you were saying before about the shame and that around it. There's a lot of like, it's gross. No. And it's like, I remember coming on my period once when having sex with a boyfriend. I must have only been, I think, like an early boyfriend. I think my first person I lost my virginity to. I remember being absolutely mortified and being so apologetic. It was in my room, it was on my bed. I didn't get anything dirty of his or whatever, but because, oh my god, he's got my blood on his hand and he's got my blood on his penis. But do you think, like, now, I think if I could go back to that younger self, I'd be like, it's not gonna hurt, it's a little bit of blood, like, don't worry about it. Do you know what I mean? I think it's that, but we're conditioned, aren't we, to think it's gross and it's icky and it's like something that we should just go and sit in a cupboard for a week until we stop bleeding.
Yeah,
so we can be decent to present ourselves back to the world.
Yeah, it's like after having like a baby though, right? Like, we love you when you're pregnant, but don't show us any like evidence that you had a baby afterwards. Like, you go back to normal, like just hide everything away, anything. It's like secret woman's business. We don't want to know about that.
Yeah,
and it's such bullshit. It's what keeps us disconnected from each other, like that that innate, this is where I think belonging is such an important like thing to talk about and think about. Like we're so innately designed to want to belong, and so we try and belong in all the ways that we think are acceptable, but they're all the things that pull us away from like deep, true, like core belonging with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is 100% what it is. Like even you just saying, Gem, about like wearing tampons as a teenager, because not because you wanted to, which is completely fine, but because you felt like you should. And I remember I exactly the same. But it is just, everybody just wants to fit in, and it's that thing that it sounds very dramatic, but it literally reminds me of like the witch trials, right, of all this stuff that's like made by men, and then to save our own asses we start kind of going through what they're saying, so that, do you know what I mean, we're not victimized. And it's that same thing of like somebody, some point, probably a man, has decided that it's disgusting to like sit in your own blood with a pad or whatever it is, and then we're like, oh yeah, you're right, it is, and we kind of all just like gang up on the other women, rather than just being like, your own damn choice. Like you either wear a pad or you wear a tampon, or you wear a cup, or you don't wear anything, or you do what the fuck you want, and that's okay. But we don't do that for some reason.
It's such like a powerful like sense, that need to belong, isn't it? And I think this is where like finding that belonging in yourself first is so important, because if you feel like you belong with yourself, if you feel like that deep trust and love for yourself, then, and you have that space around you to really feel that and connect to it, then you can do things in your life where you're not worried to be different. Because there's so many people that want to find that other sense of belonging, and for you to stand there by yourself, like in the light where it feels like no one else is around you, but you have that belonging to yourself, you're like, it's fine. It's fine for me to do this.
Do you know what though? Because I really do sound like a stalker fangirl. Only a little bit. So I mean, we've obviously spoken before about stuff anyway, and since having my son, I get a great deal of anxiety around blood, specifically my period generally. Laura's like, yes, every month. She knows when my cycles are. But do you know what, right? So I think I've said this to you before, Georgia. I had to stop tracking my period because I was getting obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And then you shared something. This is going to sound well stalkerish, I promise I'm not. You shared something and you were like, oh, I'm spotting earlier, like I'm probably going to come my period early. Cool as a cucumber. And then a few months later, you're like, oh, I'm like 8 days late for my period. And I'm like, how is she so calm? Oh my God. An early period? A late period? Oh, I'd be losing my shit. Lauren would be turning her phone off. But where I'm going with this, the fact that you are so in tune, and the fact that you're like, do you know what? For some reason, my period needs to come early this month. Oh, do you know what? For some reason, my body needs my period to come later this month. To me, I am in awe of the fact that you are that connected, and that you are that calm about it all, and that you do have that trust in yourself. Because for me, and I know for so many others, the immediate thing to jump to is something's wrong with me. Something's not working within me, because I've not got that 28 day every single month. And I think that is one of the big things with me that draws me to you in my stalkerish fangirl ways, is that because you are so, from my perspective looking at you, you just seem so in control with it all, and so knowing about everything.
It's like a surrendered control, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like what I was saying before though, about like having that greater context around things. And I think this is where the idea of cycles is like so beautifully holding. Like we have like the cycle that we're in, and then we have like, you know, the cycle of our life, or the cycle of different things that are flowing around it. And so for me, that's one of like the ultimate powers of our menstrual cycles, that we had like this, you know, like spidey, like women's intuition, I think, is just our cycle, right? Because our cycle wants to know that we're safe enough to potentially get pregnant, and like to hold a baby, and to birth a baby, and to breastfeed a baby. Like it's always looking out for the ways in which are we safe enough to do all of those things. And so you know, bleeding late or bleeding early is just a sign that my body is like so smart and like really looking out for me, that she is, you know, communicating things to me through those channels. So knowing that if I'm bleeding late and I'm not pregnant, it's because ovulation's being delayed. And like, why was ovulation delayed? Like, was I stressed around that time? Was I eating foods that like inflamed like my nervous system? Was I traveling? Were there different things that were like impacting that? And like, what a beautiful way for my body to look after me. Like, she's like, it's okay, I'm just gonna pause ovulation for a little bit and come back to it. And having like that deep awareness of myself, I'm like, oh, it's fine, you know, it's just my body working the way she's meant to. And our cycle is always trying to bring us back into alignment. You know, if we start to believe that our cycle is working for us and not against us, then we get to cultivate like that connection within.
That's really beautiful.
I love that.
He's looking after you.
I think I'm somewhere in between. I'm not Gemma, but
No one is.
But I definitely, like, I was very aware. I mean, I did check, but I was very aware this month that I wasn't pregnant when I was late. And I was very because everyone was like, you sure, like the test could be wrong? And I'm like, no, I know I'm not. Like I can feel in myself that I'm not pregnant. And I can tell also that my period is coming. I felt like I usually have a feeling like the day before my period, and I had this for like 4 days this time around. And I knew that it wasn't pregnancy. I knew that I was coming like on, but I still have that slightly neurotic thing of, but why? Like, I get that everything's going to be fine and I know it's going to come, but why is it different? And I think that's a really nice way of looking at it, and I'll try and remember that, and also try and remind Gemma of that, of the fact that it's doing something for you, and maybe there's a reason it's delayed, because it was delaying something else earlier on. I like that perspective.
Yeah, and that sense you're talking about of knowing it's coming is actually what's like considered the first menstrual chamber, which is the chamber of separation. It's this like inner sense, and it doesn't happen when you bleed. Happens like a few days to a few hours before you bleed. It's just this very intuitive inner sense that it's incoming. And I know for me, if there is like a delay in bleeding, sometimes it's like a really big emotional, especially if you're having like an emotional cycle, like there's something I haven't quite let go of. And when I, like, one time I legitimately sat in my dark cupboard and cried, and then my period came like an hour later.
Well, it's funny,
let it go.
That time, this month, when I say I had this like full breakdown, it was brewing for a few days. Like I could feel it. But actually the evening where I lost my shit, it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I'd messaged Gemma, I'd messaged a few other people, and was literally like having a breakdown. And when I went to bed, like probably 10:30, 11, I'd come on when I went to the toilet. It was literally, it was just then. It was like a couple of hours later.
Because it's the moment, like our cycle essentially is the rebirth, the growth of our ego, and then the death of our ego. And so as we're going into that new death process of when we bleed, and like if you think about autumn, right, like all the leaves are gone from the trees, like we're so like profoundly vulnerable and open and visible to ourselves, which is, you know, one of the greatest purposes of having that autumn time, that if we can like fully let go, then we get to like descend into that bleed. We've made that moment of death into rebirth. And I get so many messages from people asking me why their period's late, and I share that with them, and they'll message me like the next day being like, my period came, or right now my period's come. But I'm like, it has its own unique unfolding. It's our job to encounter it, not our job to control it. Which
what if it comes early though?
When it comes early, that's it. I mean, scientifically, you've ovulated early. Or depending if you've ovulated at all, you know, it might be that your body attempted to ovulate early or whatever it was. But it's having this information should make us feel more empowered by our body to be able to seek medical help when things change. And it's to have that greater understanding of like the cycles at large, because when we're in it, we get so like hyper focused on it that we can't like really see like the greater context at large. But if we are tracking, that's when we get to use it as like, oh, this something that happens like every 3 months, or is it something that happens every 6 months, or it's happening every month. We get to see like the greater context behind it and like put all the missing threads together.
Do you proper analyze yours? Like, do you know, like, do you have things that you know happen every few cycles or anything like that? Or is it something that you try and just like be consciously aware of each month?
Yeah, I think like, because I've been sort of tracking my cycle for like five years now. But I track like emotional, physical, energetic, nervous system. I track a bunch of random shit, just stuff that interests me mostly. So for me, it's more like at the moment I have to like go get a pelvic exam next month because I've had like mid-cycle bleeding like 3 or 4 times in the previous year, which I know is not, it shouldn't be happening. If it happens once, I'm like, that's interesting, I'm going to note that down. But now it's happened a few times. Like I've gone back and I'm like, this is all the information I have. Like I'd like to get like further, you know, understanding what's happening here, so I can go and advocate for myself in that way and not feel like I'm at a whim to what people think is best for me. Because chances are, not having that information, you'd go in and they would try and put you back on the pill, right? And there's so many people who wouldn't know, and so would go with it and trust what doctors are telling them to do.
Either that, or it's like, well, let's track it for the next year and see what happens. And by that time, if something's wrong, you're a year further down the line.
Yeah, exactly. I remember like when I was like in my like 23 or 24, I'd said that like the pill was doing something to me, and my doctor was just like, oh, let's just test a few and see what's best for you. So I was on a different one every month, and I was like, this is fucked. Like, I do not want to go through this again. Just put me back on bloody Yasmin, which is like the bad one or whatever, and let's just be done with it. Like, it's just, for them it's so, and I think it's not just male doctors, right? Like female doctors, if you've been on the pill your whole life, or if you've never experienced like a regular cycle, then they don't see any problem with it because they've never had the felt experience of what it's like.
Yeah, 100%. And I think so many people can relate to that, like being yo-yoed around different ones, whether it's to do with your hormone, like emotional reasons, whether it's to do with the fact that you break out, like whatever it is. So many people have gone through that. Again, not me because I can't swallow it, but a lot of people that I know have been through that. Oh, I'm on another pill and we're going to try this one now for a few months, and we're going to try this one, and it's just like this. And actually the amount of people I know that have ended up on the one they started on, it's crazy, because that actually ended up, like, they all have side effects. That's the one that ended up being the least, but actually in the meantime they'd really screwed with everything in their body because they were constantly trying something new.
Yeah.
And it's just this idea that women are like manic and crazy and like irrational as well. It just like feeds, there's so much like, again, like context behind it all. It just feeds into it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've somebody that struggled with depression as well quite a lot. The amount of times, especially as a teenager, I know you mentioned that earlier about like being a teenager and it being even more so of a problem, but the amount of times it was like the reason I was depressed was because I had a period, which like 50% of the population do, well, not quite, but you know what I mean, a lot of the population do. And or it was because I was a teenager, or it was because, you know, I was a girl and I was a teenager. And it's just like crazy. You can't have any legitimate, like there can't be legitimately anything wrong without people just assuming it's just part of like what you should deal with and what you should just put up with. And I think that's really hard, really disheartening, and it makes you not want to go and get help for things when they're just going to be like, go on the pill, take this, do this. Like you want somebody to like validate you and recognize that actually no, you know yourself and you know when something's off, even if it's not something that you've ever felt before.
It's like more band-aids for bullet wounds, right? And you're like sitting there like, I'm bleeding, can you just take these bullets out of me? But you don't really know how to explain that or express that, so you just sit there bleeding and they just keep patching you up, and you're like, okay, I guess I'll just keep getting on with this.
Absolutely.
If for anyone that's listening to this, what would be something that you would want them to know, or like a takeaway you would want them to take from this conversation about cycles or anything?
Oh, the biggest takeaway, there's so many that I feel so passionate about. I think it's, your body is always calling you home. Like she really, like that map that you keep looking for outside of yourself is located within yourself, and you can like start the journey and you can start trusting yourself in that way. And I know it's hard, I know it's scary, but it is the most like nourishing and nurturing like sense of homecoming when you arrive and when you continually arrive down that path, and it's open for everyone to walk down.
Start paying attention and focusing on it rather than just like ignoring it.
Yeah, and there's support to find belonging. Like you're gonna have to go out and find belonging in some different places. You're not going to find it probably with your friends and your family, and that's okay. That has to be like an accepted part of the journey. But there's so many women out there who are wanting to find like that same sense of belonging.
If anybody wants to talk to you about it or work with you in any way or just have a conversation with you, like what have you got going on? Is there anywhere that people can find you, etc.?
Yes, so everything's located on my Instagram, which is the Georgia Goodhew. I have a bunch of different stuff, really. There's so many different things that I'm passionate about. My main offering though is a group self-leadership accelerator called Activate Her. So in that it is encapsulating all the things that I'm most passionate about. So menstrual cycle activation, creating energetic space. One of the most fun and joyous and powerful things is cultivating your personal expression through it all. So not just focusing on the healing journey, but focusing on like, who the fuck am I? What the fuck do I love? What do I want to do? How do I want to express myself? And yeah, encapsulating all of that so we can self-lead sovereignty and do the things that we want to do. But apart from that, I've got some back-end courses as well. I've got my Pussy Power package, which includes like my blood ritual and some different pussy meditations for understanding your cycle and all of the wild and wondrous stuff it gives us.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Georgia, for chatting with us. I feel like me and Jem have just used this, like, honestly, it wasn't about you. We just we've
just been grilling you. We did say it was going to be like a...
No, I loved it. It was such a pleasure to be here.
You're so knowledgeable, and it's honestly, yeah, again, just need to stop fangirling. She's going to block me off Instagram after this.
Restraining order by the end of the day.
Yeah, like block that weirdo.
You keep joining in. It is a non-hierarchical circle over in my world. We are all alongside each other.
Oh, well, it really has been amazing to have you on, so thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been an absolute joy to be here.